You're watching Capitol Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. We'll continue our discussion about the legal challenges to the assault weapons ban and some other legal challenges that are related but not actually about the assault weapons ban. Joining us now to talk about that exact legal challenge is Representative Dan Caulkins. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here with you.
So you, at the beginning of this year, filed a lawsuit against the state in the state court. You separated yourself from all the other lawsuits we saw around this law. You said, we're filing this in state court, and you talked about specifically the problems you had with the way the law was passed and the procedure to get there. Your case was not wrapped in the Second Amendment issues around
Our case was specifically about the 14th Amendment, equal protection. We felt that some people are grandfathered in, some people aren't, some people are given their Second Amendment rights and some people aren't, and the people that aren't have no way to gain them back. And we felt that the law was unequal, and our Constitution, Illinois and the federal Constitution, says that everyone should be treated the same under the law. There should be no differences. We took that to our local court in Macon County, fought it out with the Attorney General's office, and we won. We won our case in Macon County, and the judge said the law is unconstitutional based on the 14th Amendment.
And then you took it to the Illinois Supreme Court, and the Illinois Supreme Court ruled against you. But now this comes back.
No, the governor, the defendants, we won. We weren't taking it anywhere. So the governor took our case to the Illinois Supreme Court.
Well, yeah, but when you're starting in the lower courts, it's going to make it to the Illinois Supreme Court. That case was
because it's a constitutional issue. It doesn't go to an appellate court. It goes right to the Supreme Court. So Governor Pritzker, Speaker Welch, and Senate President Harmon, that was their avenue to try to overturn what our local judge had said.
Which happened. The Illinois Supreme Court ruled in favor of the state.
Correct.
And now your case, you're trying to get it in front of the U.S. Supreme Court.
Right.
What happens? How did that happen that you originally said, I'm going to keep this at the state level, but now you're also right in line with the U.S. Supreme Court, and you have a conference on January 5th to try to make your case?
Well, when the Illinois Supreme Court agreed to hear our case, we filed an affidavit with the two judges and the court saying that we felt that the two most recently elected judges, Rochford and O'Brien, should recuse themselves from hearing our case. And because we didn't feel like even the appearance of impropriety or unbiased, that they couldn't be unbiased. They disagreed. The Illinois Supreme Court said it's up to the judges. We don't have an ethics code in our courts, so each judge has to decide on their own. They wrote back and made written opinion that they didn't feel that we made our case and that they were going to hear the case, and they did. And we lost. We lost in the Illinois Supreme Court.
So you wanted these two justices to step aside for this case and recuse themselves for this case. Why is that? And why did you feel like the fact that they didn't now necessitates a U.S. Supreme Court decision?
Perfect question. During the campaign that these two judges were involved in, Governor Pritzker was one of the defendants in our case, gave each of those two candidates $1 million. He's a defendant in our case. Speaker Welch and President Harmon gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to their campaign. And we later found out that President Harmon, also his lawyer, and he gave $700,000 to the super PAC that spent over $7 million to get these two judges elected. So now we have the executive and the legislative branch influencing the election of the judicial branch. On top of that, the anti-gun lobbies, Moms, I think, Demand Action, and there's another one, each endorsed these two judges, and they accepted that endorsement and publicly acknowledged those endorsements, that if an anti-gun law came to them, that they would rule in favor of banning guns in Illinois.
Is that an inevitable problem, or is that an inevitable conflict when we're talking about a Supreme Court in the state that is elected, that has to campaign, that does affiliate themselves with parties? Because there are Supreme Court, or there are justices on the Illinois Supreme Court that affiliate themselves with the Republican Party.
Correct. It's not the fact that they affiliate themselves with a party, which we do in Illinois. It's the fact that we have the executive branch and the legislative branch who will have cases brought before the Illinois Supreme Court being the main contributors to their campaigns. Let's break this down really simply for folks. You and I have a disagreement. So you're suing me, and we're going to court. And the judge that we're going to appear in front of is someone that I put $1 million into their campaign and campaigned for them to make sure that they got elected to that position. How would you feel?
But the question is...
But that is the question. How would you feel sitting in that court knowing that the judge that you're sitting to hear your case against me, I put on the bench?
But you're advocating in this case, I mean, you're making the argument for a complete constitutional change for how the Supreme Court is even brought into power in this state. Is that something for
ethics?
Is that a complaint to make to the U.S. Supreme Court? Is that where it really gets hashed out?
It's the only place left. It's called Caperton.
This building isn't where that gets hashed out?
No, well, it should get hashed out in the Supreme Court. They should have their own ethics. People should understand. How does anyone now going to have a case against the state of Illinois knowing that these two judges are looking at how they got elected, and perhaps other judges on the Supreme Court looking how those two judges got elected, and when their turn comes up, are they going to get the same help? This is a real problem, and not just Illinois, by the way. I think this case has national implications.
So you want this case this question to be brought up to where the thought of state-level judiciary is just the process could be changed. You want to see reform in that sense.
Well, I think that's a big part of it. We did have reform. You know, we said that no person can put more than $500,000 into one of these races, and Governor Pritzker put $1 million in. But he said, well, 500 came from me, and 500 came from my trust, or 500, you know. So I only put 500 in, but he put $1 million in. So we need to have some reforms, and people need to know. They need to be, I guess, assured that if they have a case and they're going to go to court, they're going to get a fair hearing. And I think this is a problem with the Illinois Supreme Court.
Those are very long-term. Obviously, the decisions are coming up in the next few weeks, but there's another thing coming up in the next few weeks, and I want to shift topics to the assault weapons ban, because your case obviously is associated with that, is about the assault weapons ban at its originally was about it at its core. We saw a few different decisions this week. The U.S. Supreme Court rejected a request for an injunction against the law in the case that's up in Naperville right now with the National Association for Gun Rights. And we also have a pending decision. This interview is being taped on Thursday. We have this interview is being taped on Friday. But we potentially have a decision coming out in East St. Louis in the federal courts about the injunction strictly on the registration deadline to this law. And all of this is happening 2 weeks before the registration deadline actually comes up, gets put in place. And I wonder what your thoughts are on just where we're at with this, the legal challenges, the actual implementation of the law. We saw JCAR decide to not put permanent rules in place for registration, so we're still working with the emergency rules. But as of right now, people have to get their guns registered by January 1st. What message does that send when everything is still in flux like this?
I think that's a real problem for the people of Illinois. It goes back to the legislation itself and how convoluted it was, and just chock full of every anti-gun piece of legislation that the Democrats could throw in the pot. It's created a lot of chaos. I have a constituent who tried to register a shotgun. Representative Spain brought it up, I know, at JCAR. He went in to register his shotgun, and he could put the brand and the serial number in, but he couldn't put the model in. So he had to register it as something that it wasn't in order to get it registered. We're not ready to prime time. This registration isn't right. The rules are not in effect. I think I think that the people that are involved in doing this need to be adults. They need to realize what's going on. They need to put a halt to this January 1st deadline, easily done. Put it off. Let's get this right. If this is going to survive the legal test, then we'll have to deal with it. But Governor Pritzker admitted, is even on, you carried it. He said he thought that this had a 30% chance of surviving a Supreme Court challenge. Well, come on. That's 70% that says that it's not going to survive. I think it's greater than that. I think that this law is blatantly unconstitutional, but let's let the system work itself out.
We heard from Governor Pritzker this week that he says, look, the number of people registering is growing. Mm-hmm. He's concerned if people don't follow the law on January 1st, but the state police have been clear that the enforcement of this is going to be at the local level, and it's unclear how the counties are, county level officials or local police are going to be moving forward with this. There's been no outright calls from bill sponsors or the state in general for a door-to-door knocking campaign. That's not in the cards. So what happens if this goes into effect on January 1st and people are supposed to register their guns?
Everyone has to make their own decision on what they do. I mean, people are moving guns out. People have decided not to comply because they believe it's unconstitutional and they don't need to. There's just a tremendous amount of uncertainty. How do you have uncertainty in a law, an enforcement of a law, and you don't have the compliance, you don't have the will of the people to comply? I mean, I think someone said at the current rate of registration, every FOID card holder that has one of these guns will be registered in something like 112 years. I mean, it's not going to happen. Gun laws don't, they're not. These aren't hurting criminals. This has been what we've said all along. The sooner we can get to the point where the people that want to ban guns or want to stem and under the guise of stopping violent crimes and gun crimes, as soon as we can get to the point of saying, okay, what can we really do? Criminals aren't registering their guns. Criminals aren't going to stop violating the federal law and putting switches on or milling off serial numbers, making straw purchases. We've got to put our efforts where we can stop the crime, where we can actually prosecute people who have illegal guns, who use guns in crime. All of these gun laws, really what they do? They give the prosecutor another charge. That the first thing that gets thrown out is an illegal gun law in order to get a confession or a conviction on a robbery or a carjacking or a murder. But they throw in the gun law as something that gets thrown out. It's the first charge that gets thrown out. So we passed these laws that say you can't have a gun or you have to register a gun, and it hasn't stopped anything.
Are you advocating, are we talking stronger, patrolling of the borders of the state to keep guns? Because right now, the registration deadline isn't here yet, but right now it's illegal to buy assault weapons. It's illegal to buy large capacity magazines in the state of Illinois. If people are still getting them, likely getting them from other states, is that, and when you say we need to refocus efforts, is that where the efforts need to be refocused? Is state, essentially patrolling states with weaker gun laws?
No, I think the effort has to be in prosecuting criminals that use guns, that commit crimes. Send a message. If you're going to commit a crime and there's a gun involved, you're going to pay a steep price for it. Most of these gun convictions come on the federal side. The state, I don't think states' attorneys get gun convictions unless it's part of another deal that they don't plead out, which happens way too often. I think we need to concentrate on enforcing the laws we have, perhaps stiffening the laws that we have, and get prosecutors that will actually take these cases to court. Let's prosecute the criminals, not the law-abiding citizen.
Before I let you go, last question. You had said it's everybody's choice to make on January 1st, but you are a public official, you represent a section of this state. If a gun owner comes to you in Macon County and says, hey, what should I do? What are you telling them?
I can't make that decision for them. I can't.
No advice?
Well, the law is the law. Everyone has to obey the law or make a choice whether they want to obey the law or not. I think this law is unconstitutional, but right now it's the law. Make your choices. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not going to defend anyone in court. And hopefully, people will make their own choices, and they'll live with the choices they make.
All right. Well, Representative Dan Caulkins, thank you so much for joining us.
And my pleasure, and thank you very much for having me.
When we come back, we'll take a look at the new law that Governor Pritzker just signed that's supposed to fix the state's licensing process for many professional careers. We'll be right back.